Good morning, and another meditation on the modern gods, the gods of this age. And I think I need to talk about sex because there's an obsession with sex, and particularly, I would say, an obsession with sexual fulfillment in the current age. There is an irony that the birth rate is plummeting, but people are, it seems, fairly obsessed with sex, the means of reproduction originally. Now, this is just a meditation, so there are some unfinished thoughts in this next couple of minutes coming your way. I'm musing out loud, and it seems to me that I cannot muse on the powers of this age without saying something about the matter of sex. There is a triple warning in the Song of Solomon, uttered by the main female heroine of the Song of Songs, and she says it 3 times, and the first time she says it is in chapter 2:7. Daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you by the gazelles and by the does of the field, do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires. I think take that as a warning from a woman caught in the throes of sexual love, saying to the daughters of Jerusalem, be careful, this is powerful and it could be dangerous. Anyway, why do I think sexual fulfillment is a modern god? You might say to me, Eric, if there's one thing that's ancient, it's sex. Plants and animals have been reproducing, being driven by sex for countless ages. And human beings, of course, have always been obsessed by sexual attraction, sexual love, and sexual misbehavior. Is there anything really new going on now? Yes, I think so. I think that the modern obsession with sexual fulfillment in particular is something relatively new. I think the modern age feels empty and godless to a lot of people. It feels as though the other gods have in some way failed or disappeared. There is so little left to believe in, so little left that we can serve. The traditional religions are waning and have been exposed quite often. The political gods, not many people believe in nationalism or socialism or progressive politics of any sort. We're surrounded by the propaganda of self-culture and advertising and self-development. The rise of the pseudoscience of psychology, the pervasive influence of advertising based on that pseudoscience to a large extent, closely related to each other if you look at the history of them all. And it seems to me that there's not much folk wisdom left in the modern world, but a lot of the folk wisdom is basically the wisdom of pop psychology. Integrity has been redefined, I think, as being true to yourself now. True to yourself. Talking about your own condition. The language of psychology being used. You know, people talk about their obsessions, their neuroses, their phobias, and all those other words. It's all about you and me, developing ourselves. The libraries and the bookshops have whole sections on how to develop and love yourself more completely. Now, if the only thing left to love is yourself, and if the only thing left to trust is your own integrity, sure, you're going to look within yourself, aren't you? And what is the most powerful drive? Well, until you reach extreme old age, the most powerful drive is often the drive for sexual fulfillment. So sex takes on a big role in your life. In the wasteland of modern life, sexual stimulation is often the nearest thing people will have to a real experience. And someone, I can't remember who, said something clever. Sex is the mysticism of the materialist. The only time the materialist feels lifted out of himself, his only experience of anything that might be transcendent or beyond, is that moment of sexual escape. It's a momentary escape, of course, from the dullness of a self-centered consumer lifestyle. It feels transcendental, but it's illusory, just as most escapist spirituality turns out in the end to be an illusion. One little sign of our modern obsession is the way we swear. People, when they swear, usually try to swear by something bigger than themselves, and the word swearing originally meant blasphemy. So people would find creative ways of swearing on the name of Jesus, the name of God, or their favourite saints or whatever. But these days, swearing is mainly profane language with a sexual side to it. I won't be crude and go through all the rude words I know, but quite a lot of the powerful and commonly used so-called swear words are actually sex words. And that's a hint that sex is one of the little gods of the modern age. Anyway, I'd better move on to the consequences. It seems to me that many people now define themselves by their sexuality. The big change, of course, has been the gay sex and queer sex agenda being driven. People, when they define themselves by their sexuality, create an artificial environment quite often. So people talk about the gay scene, which seems to have begun in the late 19th century, about 1880. In London, rich homosexuals started developing their own little subculture. But now there are really dozens of subcultures, each devoted to their own particular form of sexual deviance or variation. And it seems to me that even among straight people, the right to do almost anything to find sexual satisfaction seems to be considered something close to being a human right. Every loyalty tends to become secondary to this search for satisfaction, for sexual fulfillment. Families are being destroyed every day by that search. No other love is allowed to trump or restrict sexual love. And people often claim they need sexual freedom to find their true self. That is the language of religion. And the consequence of this obsession with finding sexual satisfaction or fulfillment is a fractured society. Because sexual fulfillment is always transitory. It's no more lasting than a drug-induced high. And like drug addiction and alcoholism and addiction to gambling, so an obsession with sexual satisfaction can lead to an equally destructive lifestyle. Promiscuous sex may feel momentarily like two bodies becoming one, but in the long term it's alienating, it breaks relationships, it's nothing more than an exercise in cooperative selfishness, and it leaves people more isolated in old age. So that's the modern obsession, the god of sex, not just sex in itself, but sexual satisfaction or sexual fulfillment. What's the Christian response? Well, obviously, chastity and self-control are two of the main things advised in the New Testament. I would totally agree that without a certain level of self-control and a certain level of chastity, it is impossible to live a Christian life. And we need to be wary of allowing sex to dominate us. Sexual attraction is real, sexual love is real, but they can be dangerous. And sexual misbehavior will weaken and sicken the soul more than few other things do. The Apostle Paul warns particularly against random sexual behaviour because it's a sin against your own body. Now, I'm not particularly one of those people who is obsessed with masturbation or with the powerful experience of desire. I was a teenager once. I remember those days. But I do think that if we don't teach our young people restraint and self-control, then we are teaching them to fail at life. And we need to say, look, sexual love is powerful and it can mislead very easily. I'm going to finish where I started with the Song of Songs. Daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you by the gazelles and by the does of the field, do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires. In other words, there is a right time for sexual love to rise up in our hearts and be expressed. But don't push it and don't let it dominate you. Anyway, that's my meditation for today, and I hope it helps. In the meantime, God bless you and keep you. Bye-bye.